General direction. Come closer. I took a shower this morning. Folks in the back, I promise. I took 2 showers today. I don't bite. Come on over. Well, hello everybody. Good evening and welcome to our One Journey Upwardly Global, Think Global, Act Global event. We are so glad that you are here. I'm just going to do a quick audience pulse check. Has anyone here heard of the One Journey Festival before 2 weeks ago? Raise your hand if you heard about them 2 weeks ago. Raise your hand if you heard about them in the last 2 weeks. A couple of people last week? A couple more people? All right, so we're just getting out there. So my name is Molly Bao. I'm a volunteer with the One Journey Festival. One Journey is a scrappy group of volunteers who do night and weekend work, dedicating our time to trying to change the narrative about refugees and immigrants in the United States. And we got started about a year ago. We're based out of DC, and we are looking to spread to the West Coast. It's our first West Coast event, so thank you for inviting me. I learned that there was a big bridge over here, and it was golden yesterday, and it was really beautiful. And you've got lots of hills. I had no idea. I'm from Louisiana originally. We live in DC, most of us, in the One Journey family. So we are doing this event to try to bring our message out to the West Coast. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And the 30 seconds, so what? Why do you care about One Journey? Is that we got together and tried to start changing the story and the narrative and the tone about refugees right around the midpoint of the 2016 election. Something wasn't quite right with the way that immigrants and refugees were being characterized. You heard about other, you heard about walls, you heard about nativist rhetoric and fascism on the rise, and we didn't like it and we wanted to do something about it. And we got together to say, what might we do to help people change the tone? And in changing that tone, changing the way we characterize and tell that story of the other coming to us, we also create welcoming communities. We not only change the tone and the narrative, but that inspires action and welcoming and open doors and acceptance. And we start to see people for their talents and their tenacity, their humanity, and their likeness towards us. And so what we do is, instead of tell you about the tragedies and the insanity that is massive migration forced by climate change, war, political instability, and all the things that many of you know or you wouldn't be here. You probably are already part of the self-licking ice cream cone group of people who care and people who want to do something about what you see. We are too. But we want to expand beyond that. We want to get beyond just that self-selected group of people who get up, who look for opportunities to lend a hand. And we're doing that because we're doing that in the way of celebration. So we create in One Journey events for connectivity, events that create awareness and understanding through arts and music and dance and food. We bring people together and we have celebrations. So yes, we recognize that there is tragedy. We recognize that there is sorrow and sadness, but there's also hope and inspiration. And we want to connect you to the common languages of humanity through that food, art, dance, through our festival, which we culminate every year. All these events crescendo into this huge killer party. And we had our inaugural year last year. We had a huge festival in DC. We had thousands of people come. We had rock star musicians. We had choirs, an all-refugee choir come down from Maine. They did 2 original songs for us. We had vendors showing their arts and crafts. We had this guy play, who's down from San Diego, who came up here for us today. Yeah, that's you, man. You're going to hear from him today. Mwinda. He is an amazing man, and I'm going to tell you more about him in just a second. He's going to steal the show for you. He is incredible. So we culminated our year's worth of activity in this huge festival. We're going to do the same thing this year. This is our second event of the year. We're doing a film series back in DC, and so you're our first West Coast event, and we're going to kick it off. The so what of One Journey is we are here to connect you to people like you who come from other places, and we want you to understand their awesomeness, their talents. And we do that again through the festival, the celebrations. We also help people address that frustration of what can I do because we are aware of the global refugee crisis. Do you know that in the next 60 seconds, there's going to be at least 16 people who will lose their home or flee their home because of crises? The average stay at a refugee camp is more than 12 years. You've got 65 million people who've been forcibly displaced from their homes. 65 million people is not a number that you're going to get your head around anytime soon. But it's the largest migration since World War II, and of that, almost 26 million are refugees, people who have actually left their countries. These are frustrating and devastating and depressing statistics. And what we try to do is help you find a way to do something and step up about that. And that's why we have events like this to connect you to people who are doing things locally, regionally, and globally. And so today is that Think Global, Act Global. We've got some really amazing organizations around the room. 12 organizations have come in tonight. We're going to give them a chance to take the mic and tell you about them. And you have the opportunity to step up to each one of these booths, get to know them, and take some action, all right? So, big themes, big so what's, why do you care? It's all about that common humanity. We're doing it through the art, the entertainment, the joy that celebrates those talents, and we're connecting you through channels that help you take action to start to address some of these things that we're seeing around the world. So that's us, that's why, that's the so what. Let me give you like the quickest little snippet of what we did last year. I don't really need a microphone for you to hear me, so let me just put that down. This is a snapshot of what we did. This is what our festival was all about last year. And go. Somebody's crying, Bolo. Somebody's crying, Bolo. I need your love today. I need you right away. That's a little bit about us, guys. That's what we did last year, and we're going to do it again this year, and we're going to do it a whole heck of a lot bigger. So tonight, we're going to bring up some pretty killer folks to talk to you about what they're doing, give you an opportunity to learn about them. We've got Atif, Javed, and I'm going to go and make this little guy be quiet. Shh, I'm talking. All right, so we've got Atif Javed. He is an amazing entrepreneur. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about himself in just a second. Then we've got our One Journey co-founder, Wendy, who's going to come up and chat with us. And then Abraham is going to rock our socks off with some incredible music. So that's what that, I'm done with that. So let me just tee up our friend who's going to come and talk to us. So Atif Javed is an amazing guy. He is Forbes 2019 30 under 30 entrepreneur, and this man is connecting the more than 26 million refugees worldwide with more than 18 languages, and I'm going to get this right, Atif. I'm not going to screw this up, and if I do, you're going to correct me. More than 2 million translators? He's going to tell you all about this because I'm not going to screw up his story. This man has connected an incredible community of bilingual individuals to aid workers and refugees in refugee camps so they can break through the communication, so they can do micro-volunteering, so they can break through any kind of language barrier to get the services and aid they need. And he's going to tell you way more about it than I can. And I'm going to bring him to the stage so he can tell his story. Sir, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Atif Javed. I'm the co-founder of Tarjimly, which means translate for me in Arabic. So the mission of Tarjimly is to improve the lives of refugees by eliminating language barriers. So let me start by asking, how many people here are bilingual? Raise your hand. Whoa, okay. How many people here are just speak only one language? Raise your hand. For the people who speak only one language, have you ever fallen into a situation where you are surrounded by other people that speak another language and you just want to get out of that? You just don't know what's happening. You just can't believe that you're stuck in this situation. And it's hard. It's very difficult to be in this place like that. For those who are bilingual, how many of you have translated or interpreted for family, friends, anyone before? Raise your hand. Right? I think that's really interesting. And for myself as an immigrant, for myself who comes from a refugee family, my grandmother was actually a refugee, and I always found myself interpreting for her every single day when she was at the doctor's appointment, when we had to see a lawyer, when we had to talk to a government official, when we had to do anything in our lives. She used me as the interpreter for her. And that was a very special thing for me to be available for her whenever I could. But imagine the people today who don't have that opportunity. Imagine every single refugee that's in a refugee camp that doesn't have an interpreter available for them. In 2016, my best friend Aziz and I, we actually started researching this problem in great detail in refugee camps in Greece and in Turkey. We went and we saw that this was a problem for refugees that were resettling in new countries as well as stuck in refugee camps. Just imagine being a Syrian mother and your son's sick and they need emergency help, but the English-speaking medic, the Doctors Without Borders person, the person from the UNHCR, they don't speak a word of Arabic. And you tell them that your son is allergic to penicillin, and at that point it could be a life or death scenario. For me, that was unacceptable to see that, and I couldn't do anything because I didn't speak that language. I didn't speak Arabic for them. So I said to myself, what if there was a way every single bilingual in the world could be connected to this problem and serve and help that person in need? What if there was no barriers for us? What if we could use technology to break down not just the physical barriers and the borders that constrain these refugees every day, but the language barriers that block them when it comes to everything they have to do in their lives? So fast forward to 2017. Aziz and I were working on this application just as a side project. I was working in tech, he was working in tech in Silicon Valley. We were like, you know what, we're tired of ad optimization, we're tired of building widgets and working for big tech companies. Let's do this project on the side and see how it goes. January 2017, the travel ban, the Muslim ban, the refugee ban, whatever you want to call it, however you want to sanitize it, came down, and we launched Tarjimly, which is a Facebook Messenger app that allows any bilingual, one of the 3 billion bilinguals, people in this room, people like me and you, who can volunteer and be connected to a refugee on demand in real time, and a humanitarian organization on demand in real time to help them with translation. And in 24 hours, 3,000 people signed up for that application. And what that signaled to us was that this is not only a problem from the refugee and humanitarian side, but also there's a demand for this. There are people who are tired of standing around, not feeling like they have any way to have an impact or be able to connect with that problem. Our goal at Tarjimly is to do a lot more than just translation, and I've kind of touched on that with a few people here today. Our goal at Tarjimly is to give refugees their voice back. Our goal at Tarjimly is to be a connective layer and an efficiency layer for the humanitarian services where anybody can be mobilized. Millions of people can be mobilized to connect with refugees in that instance. I want to share 3 quick stories with you all about the impact that we've had over the last year. In the last year, 7,000 volunteers around the world in the US, the UK, Canada, Egypt, Germany, wherever, 95 different countries, have volunteered over 7,000 hours to help 15,000 refugees and aid workers in standard everyday scenarios and critical scenarios. And just taking a moment for myself to think and reflect on that, it's like, a year and a half ago, I would have never imagined myself being in that position where we've started to help hundreds and thousands of refugees every single week. And so I want to share 3 quick stories. The first was actually the first scenario that ever happened on Tarjimly, which was a woman in a trauma center in Greece who was working with 25 Afghan and Syrian women. These women were accepted into the trauma center because they were dealing with food insecurity, they were dealing with depression, they were dealing with suicide, a woman had a miscarriage. And a Tarjimly translator was available for that woman constantly to be able to help translate for her, to speak with those Arabic and Arabic-speaking and Farsi-speaking refugees. And for me, it was a moment of just like, this is it. This is what we built this application for. This woman was volunteering with an organization for 6 months. She lives in LA right now. I'm friends with her. But she couldn't even speak to those refugees. How can she do the job of trauma counseling for them? And so this was a moment of realization for us. The second was when another example that's happening more and more often these days with the asylum work that's happening at the US border. A Tarjimly translator was available for a Congolese woman who waited months for her asylum interview in the US, only to find out day of her interpreter was unavailable. So what was going to happen? They were going to cancel her appointment, they were going to send her home, they were going to say come back in 4 or 6 months. Right? A Tarjimly translator picked up on the phone, on the Facebook Messenger application, and said, no, I'll be available for you, I'm here for you to talk you through this. And so she served as an interpreter for over an hour. She's a woman who lives in France, who's from Côte d'Ivoire, probably from a refugee family herself, and actually spent over an hour to translate and interpret for that refugee woman to do her asylum interview appointment. And she contacted us later and thanked us. I was like, you spent an hour helping this woman. Like, I thank you. And she actually reached back out to us and said, thank you for that opportunity. So this was a signal that we were catching onto something that was not only useful for the refugees and the NGOs, but engaging on the side of people in our best form, and the things that people think, oh, we need to pay you $15 an hour. I bet everybody in this room, if you signed up for Tarjimly, I can pick a number to pay you that would give you the same satisfaction that it would be to help that refugee in that dire circumstance. And the last scenario that I want to share with you was probably my favorite story, which is a woman in LA who's a designer, sitting in her living room, is watching Netflix, and she gets a ping on her phone, says, hey, we need a translator to translate from Turkish to Greek. And she picks up her phone, gets connected in a chat session, and says, hey, I'm available to talk to and help with this. And the NGO on the other side is a Greek NGO called Alarm Phone that was trying to rescue 12 refugees who had capsized into the Mediterranean and were freezing without food, without water, without clothes, without anything for hours in the Mediterranean. They had capsized. They didn't have an interpreter available. They said, we need someone to call the Turkish Coast Guard and give these coordinates. She picks up the phone, second phone in her house, I guess, because she can't use the same phone. And then she calls the Turkish Coast Guard as an interpreting between one phone and the other, in Greek and in Turkish, to that Turkish Coast Guard. And she rescues those refugees. And so these scenarios just blew my mind. And I thought about this more and more and more, and I realized there are billions of bilinguals in the world, and there's 65 million refugees. I look at that as an engineer and I say that's a solvable problem. So this is what we're trying to do with Tarjimly, and beyond that, we're trying to go even beyond translation into seeing what other services we could provide. Maybe that's mental health support connection, maybe that's language learning, maybe that's asylum interview help, who knows. But what I would like to do is invite you all, if there's 3 things that you can do to help. One, all those bilinguals who raise their hands, if you'd like to sign up for Tarjimly, you can sign up on the Facebook Messenger app, and our mobile app will be launching soon in January at www.tarjim.ly. The second is if you'd like to volunteer on our team as an engineer, help us reach the 1 million volunteers that we want to reach in 2019. Our goal is to bring on 1 million volunteers and help 100,000 refugees in 2019. You want to be a part of that mission? I'd love to talk with you, and my table is at the back. And the third is if you can connect us to NGOs and organizations that are working in this space. Myself and my team are all people who are in our own Silicon Valley bubble, and we're finally bursting it, and we're trying to get out into the world and help us connect with the organizations that do this for a daily basis. And I'm just honored to be here with One Journey and the other organizations here today and be able to be a part of this with you all. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I'd love to connect with you at any point. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. That was awesome. Next, I'd like to bring up Abraham Mwinda. Abraham was one of our rock stars in the One Journey Festival inaugural festival. He flew in from the West Coast over to the East Coast to join us. Abraham is a Congolese refugee who grew up in Kenya, who migrated to Kentucky 5 years ago. When he was in Kentucky, he was invited to an event that had a pro-refugee theme, and he was asked to share his story, and he found his voice, and he wrote his first song in English. He'd been writing songs in Swahili for a long time. He's an incredibly talented guitarist, rapper, musician, lyricist, and he found his voice that day in that event. He's gonna tell you a little bit more about that and share some of his music with you tonight. So please give me a warm welcome for Abraham.
Hi, how's it going? Yeah, I just want to personally thank Wendy and the One Journey Festival for having me here. My story is long, but let me just start. I had the privilege 2 weeks ago to invite my mom, fly her. I got a $50 ticket. Flew her to California for the first time, and it was her first time to the beach since before I was born. So that was pretty cool. But while she was there, we got to really talk about the whole journey. Coming from Congo, living in Kenya, and now finally being here. We had never really talked about it. I had completely avoided the conversation because I just didn't want to bring it up just in case she wasn't at the point when she wants to talk about it. I experienced the war and being a refugee as a child, but that day I wanted to get the perspective of an adult. And one of the things that she said to me that really stuck to me, she was telling me about how she was holding me in her hands, and then she was skipping bodies, and one of the dead bodies that were laying on the ground was a woman that had a baby still nursing, because the baby didn't know that the mom was dead, so she kept nursing. And why am I telling you that? I'm telling you that because so many times we hear about refugees, we have this romanticized version of war on TV and Rambo and all those. Those are great movies. But war and insecurity and all these things, it's a real thing. It's a real issue that happens. And these are real people that are involved. And when I first moved to America 5 years ago, it was hard for me to make friends. But once I made friends, people would ask me different questions about Africa, and do you guys not wear shoes and all these things. And the first thing in my head was, man, these people are ignorant. But then, once I took the chance to get to know them, I realized that they're not ignorant. It's just not those that actually know more about what happens, don't talk about it. For good reasons and bad reasons. You don't come out of a traumatic experience and you want to talk. Not so many people want to talk about it after because you don't want to remember it. You're past that. Some of us went to counseling. I went to like a two session, 6 month counseling period. So after that, you don't really want to talk about it. But one of the things that I really love about One Journey, and one of the things that made me really fall in love with the vision was that whole slogan of changing the narrative of the refugees. And just to touch on that, 2 weeks ago, I went to one of my best friend's wedding. I was his best man, but it turned out that I was the only African or black person in that wedding. But this is my best friend. And when I was there, I looked around and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I had walked through the door with all the stereotypes and I know about the white people. But spending a whole weekend with his family and experiencing firsthand what a white person is like and how they relate to each other, it was kind of like them telling their own story to me firsthand, you know. And it's not me coming. It broke down all the negative narratives that I may have heard in the past because I got to experience it firsthand. And I feel like that's what One Journey does for all of us. We get to experience refugees firsthand and hear their story. These are educated people. Some of these people have more degrees than people in America that have lived here their whole lives. Because they're not as illiterate as we think and all that stuff. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. So I really just want to encourage you guys to get out of your comfort zone, you know, step outside of your box and begin to be intentional about learning about the world. And I just want to finish this by saying that we're all related and we're all walking in the same shoes. And I'll finish with a short story. When I lived in Kenya, we fled from Congo to Kenya because Kenya was safe. And then I went to school with Kenyan friends, and it was great. But most of the times, I would always get questions like, why don't you go back to your country? This is not your country. They're just innocent kids, they just don't know. But in 2007, I personally witnessed people getting shot outside of our house because there was war and there was political insecurity and tension. What does that tell you? It tells you that no one is safe. No one is immune to this thing. You don't wake up in the morning and just be like, man, I wish there's war here today, you know? You don't wake up in the morning wishing that your child dies or all these things happen. It can happen to anyone. So let us hold our sisters and our brothers in by telling their story, by learning about them, by supporting them, and also by supporting this great, great vision that One Journey has. Yeah, thank you.
Oh yeah, man, you're up. You can get off the hook. Abraham's gonna play for us a couple of tunes, and he's pretty darn good at it. Is the other one on? All right, let me turn this. All right, my friend. You're in for a treat. You good?
Can you guys hear me?
We're about to.
Okay, so this song is called Believe, and I wrote it because I had a conversation with some of my friends, and they were telling me that they don't think that things will ever change, and it got me really thinking that it's about breaking the cycle. We can't change what people did in the past, but we're here, and we can change the future, right? But we have to believe, so I hope you guys learned something from it.
Step into the light to find a way to fix the mess. Together we can make it right. We don't gotta repeat the same mistakes of the forefathers. We can break free from the chains that divide us. We are one tribal human race, different colors, different faces. And yes, we come from different places, but we all bleed red. So let's be kind, yeah. Let's be patient with one another. Let's be gracious, yeah. And in the midst of the war, the poverty and disease, in the midst of division, the lies and the greed, I still believe we can rise above, yeah. All the hate and hurt, we can light a spark in the dark, yeah. With the power of love, in the midst of the war, the poverty and disease, in the midst of division, the lies and the greed, I still believe we can rise above all the hate and hurt. We can light a spark in the dark, yeah. With the power of love, I still believe. I believe we can live in harmony. You and me, open up your heart and let love come in and set you free. We don't gotta walk around with bitterness anymore now, now. We don't gotta be slaves to hate, forgive for every wrong now. And we can now move forward by holding on to the past, no. So let it go now. Be free at last in the midst of the war, the poverty and disease, in the midst of division, the lies and the greed. I still believe we can rise above all the hate and hurt. Tungo itanie Kusangana vaninga Tunga bokai Ozala mungala Mswahili mukongo mulipa Bisonyo so Wana yinzawe And I'm in the midst of the war The poverty and disease In the midst of division The lies and the greed I still believe we can rise above all the hate and hurt. We can light a spark in the dark. In the power of love, I still believe.
Sorry about the guitar. Okay, so this next song is called Revolution, and yeah. Hope you guys can sing with me at some point. But it's really, really short. It's really short.
And just like the fish near the sea, yeah. And just like the birds need the air to fly free. Oh, you and I need each other. So let us put aside our religion and color. Because we are one people. And yes, we are all equal. And revolution, yes, it starts with you and me. Yes, it starts with you and me. And all this pollution, yes, it can end with you and me. Yes, it can end with you and me. If we only come together.
That's the part you sing.
If we only come together as one. If we only come together. If we only come together as one. So don't worry
Maybe you guys will sing this one.
about a thing. Because every little thing.
Oh yeah, we can do that.
So don't worry now about a thing. Yeah. Because if we only come together. If we only come together as one. If we only come together. If we only come together as one.
Thank you so much.
We're going to bring you back up later for a song or two more after we hear from the founder of One Journey, Miss Wendy Chen.
So as Molly introduced, my name is Wendy Chen. I'm the co-founder of One Journey. And it's really wonderful to bring One Journey to the West Coast because I'm actually from California. This is my home state. I grew up in Sacramento and I went to school at Berkeley. So this is really wonderful to feel to be back home. A little bit about myself. I thought that since Molly has really done a beautiful job at describing what One Journey is about, perhaps I can share a little bit with you all why I started the One Journey movement. I started One Journey, and I started One Journey primarily because of my identity as a parent, as a person of faith, and finally, as an immigrant. As a parent, I don't know how many of you remember about 3 years ago, the picture of Alan Kurdi, the 3-year-old Syrian boy whose lifeless body was washed ashore at a Turkish beach. And that picture really deeply moved me and disturbed me because my little boy was 3 years old. And for me, it is really hard to imagine what hopelessness and what disaster the parents must be facing at home, that they're willing to take that journey to bring their little ones on boat, to risk of death in order to seek a better future and a more peaceful future for the family. So that was my first moment of wanting to do something about the refugee crisis. Secondly, I'm a person of faith, and I cannot stand and not do anything when my faith calls for me to love my neighbors as ourselves. And as Molly mentioned earlier, when the world is facing a refugee crisis of historical scale, when we're facing 68 million people being displaced, and that is 1 out of every 110 people in the world. When we're facing that magnitude of humanitarian crisis, and our country, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, is saying that we're closing our doors to refugees and immigrants who are legitimately to seek for safety. As a person of faith, I feel like I cannot stand around and do nothing. And finally, as an immigrant, I feel a deep, deep gratitude for what life has offered me. If I think about my life as that little girl from China who grew up in a house with minimal modern amenities, really that running water and electricity was about all I had, that I had to walk to school every day for 45 minutes each way, to where I am today. I'm working at a global consulting firm. I have received world-class education, and I also live in one of the most affluent communities in the country. I feel deeply blessed. And I know that it's not because I'm smarter or harder working than any people that I know. It's because my family has been lucky that I was able to get that piece of immigration paper so that I can come to the US and live to my fullest potential. So I feel like I have won life's lottery. But haven't we all won life's lottery? Every one of us who's sitting here, haven't we all won that life's lottery? Where if you compare to the Syrian professionals and college students who saw their life abruptly interrupted by war, now living in a refugee camp, staying for 17, 20 years without any prospect of rebuilding their lives. If you look at the Rohingya mother who saw her child brutally murdered in front of her eyes, simply because she's a Rohingya mother, haven't we all won life's lottery? So with that, with blessings and gratitude and privilege of life, I think we're all called to take action. And that's what One Journey is about. It's about taking that action, providing the platform for every single one of you to really learn about the refugee crisis and take action and meet with amazing nonprofits who are doing great work to help refugees, to know that there's something that you can do today to help, to serve, and to really move people to a better life. I have been so proud of my One Journey team and every single one of our volunteers who work nights and weekends for the last over a year to put our One Journey movement together. We deeply, deeply believe in this belief that is so beautifully captured by Helen Keller about 100 years ago, in which she said, the world is moved forward not only by the mighty shove of its heroes, but also by the aggregate tiny pushes of its honest workers. So together, every one of us, we can push with our tiny pushes, we can move the world towards more compassion and loving, and we can build a world that can be good for all mankind. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
So we've got some incredible organizations here. I'm going to go around the room and I'm going to give them a brief moment at the microphone, about 30 seconds each as we go around, and then we're going to open it up for you to connect with them, to learn more about them, to get engaged with them as you desire. So we're going to do a little quick tour around the room. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you? Partnerships for Trauma Recovery.
Tell us about yourself.
We are a nonprofit that works with people who have fled human rights abuses and we provide counseling, therapy, mental health support, and community building around destigmatizing mental health. So that's kind of a short snippet of what we do.
That's brilliant. Please come talk to them later. Please come. Thank you. Give them a hand of applause. Round of applause. This is our one journey tonight. You've heard lots about us, so we're going to skip to the next. Hi.
Hi, I'm Candace Chen. I'm the Director of Refugee Foster Care Program at Catholic Charities in Santa Clara County, a very long name. So basically we serve unaccompanied refugee and immigrant youth who are in the United States, and we place them with loving families. So there's great stories about being a parent. We are always recruiting for loving and caring individuals or families who already have kids. And we provide a whole host of comprehensive services to support the families and the youth in our program. And youth in our program, they enter our program as minors, so under 18, and they can remain with us up until they're 24 years old. So we're very gracious for all the wonderful support from our community members too. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Give them a round of applause. Coming right over here. Hello.
Hi there. I am Stephanie with the International Rescue Committee in Northern California. We work with refugees here in the Bay Area, and we help refugees access housing, employment, access to health services, and finally a pathway to citizenship, helping refugees with immigration services as well. Always looking for volunteers and help with in-kind donations that really make our programs a success. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to Stephanie later. Hello.
Hi, I'm David with World Relief Sacramento. We're also a refugee resettlement agency, very similar to the IRC. Sacramento was the largest resettlement destination in the entire country last year. Actually, for the last few years, it's been the largest resettlement destination, meaning we received more refugees through the Refugee Resettlement Program than any other city, or really most states in the country. So while refugee numbers are going down nationally under the current administration, Sacramento's remained quite busy, and so we're quite active, both welcoming new folks coming in, seeking safety and freedom here, and also investing in the community that's come to Northern California so that they can thrive here and achieve long-term successful integration. So you probably didn't know that about Sacramento or Northern California, but this is the resettlement, the refugee hotspot for the United States.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'm with Asylum Access, and our mission is to make human rights a reality for refugees. And we use legal aid and policy advocacy to challenge the barriers that are preventing refugees from living safely, moving freely, working and going to school, because, as I'm sure all of you here agree with me, when refugees can rebuild their lives, communities and nations thrive. So please come talk to me if you want to learn more.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Atif, and I'm on the advisory board of the RCO Center, which is the Refugee Center Online. We are the only comprehensive resource, online resources. We provide newcomers, which is immigrants and refugees, a very huge database, researchable database, in addition to GED courses, citizenship online courses, teacher training courses. We provide these services in so many languages. You can go and search the language, so refugees can browse their own languages. We're also based now in Italy with all the refugee crisis and Europe, and we're launching 2 apps for GED and for citizenship online courses. So please come learn more if you're interested.
Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Bijan Yamin Afshar. I'm the Partnerships and Volunteer Program Lead at Upwardly Global. Upwardly Global is a national nonprofit. We started here in San Francisco in 2000, and we work with skilled immigrants and refugees, and we help them get back into their own professional careers. These are engineers, doctors, scientists, teachers who worked in their own fields back in their own country, and when they arrive here, they struggle through the job search process. They don't know the system here, they don't have connections, so we help them through that whole process. Basically everything that we all as professionals go through. And we have helped almost 6,000 people since our founding get back into their careers nationally, and we're very proud of that. And this year, just this year, we're actually on track to place 1,000 people back into their careers, so we're very happy about that. Ways you guys can help, 2 ways. If you know people that can use our services, immigrants that are here, that are recent arrivals, that are professionals that have work authorization, please send them our way. Our services are free, and we would love to work with them. We also have a very active volunteer program. If you'd like to volunteer with us as professionals, it doesn't matter what field you're in, please come talk to me. I would love to have you sign up and join our program and support us. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Jyoti and I'm with Refugee Transitions. We serve all newcomers regardless of their document status, refugees, asylum seekers, and immigrants. Our mission is to assist newcomers become self-sufficient in the U.S. by providing education, family engagement, and community leadership services. Education is our core service. Through our education, we have home-based tutoring, after-school tutoring, and in-class adult English and language and vocational classes, so you can volunteer with us. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Alex. I'm with No One Left Behind. We have a very specific focus. For the last 18 years, there have been Iraqi and Afghani people who have served alongside U.S. military, NATO military, civilian government in their home countries. And through bipartisan legislation, when those people are threatened by Taliban, ISIS, what have you, they are given what are called special immigrant visas to come to the United States, usually with their families. We were founded by a military officer and his translator, who saved his life actually, to basically assist these people in transitioning into American life. So we usually pick up the ball sometime after World Relief or IRC or Catholic Charities as we resettle them. And basically we specialize in one-on-one mentorship, partnering these people with folks who want to just help them transition into American life, find jobs, things like that. And basically treat these people like heroes because a lot of them have served, bled, and died in some cases for not only the future of their country, but also American soldiers. And so we sort of focus on a very one-to-one basis. So if you're interested in mentorship, English tutoring, job coaching, things like that, come talk to me and I'm happy to sign you up.
Hi, I'm Vicki Tropolis representing Love Without Borders for Refugees in Need. And we are on the ground in the refugee camps in Greece providing art workshops for children and adult refugees. We bring the art back to show the art to exhibitions worldwide, providing a forum for the refugees to tell their story, to work through their trauma by creating the art. The art is available for purchase with 100% of the proceeds of each piece being returned to the artist who created the piece. So we're also providing a form of economic self-empowerment for refugees. The way people can help is to invite us to have a show at your venue, at your church, at your home. We do private shows. We will share the stories, we have the bios, we have videos from our artists, and we would love the opportunity to show the art all over. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. We are going to close the program. We are so grateful for your time, for joining us, for becoming part of our One Journey family tonight. I hope you were inspired by some of the stories and the music that you heard. We are going to give you chances to go and listen to these amazing people's stories, get connected, find ways to lend a hand, to volunteer to become a mentor, and Abraham's going to crank up some music. So thanks, everybody. Cheers.